Well, good morning, you sexy little TikToky bastards. Let's pose a question. Let's play with a very uncomfortable idea for a moment, shall we? Here's my question for you this morning. What would happen if the Conservative Party won the next general election? What would happen then? I know there's a lot of you that would be spitting your coffee out, filling your boxers, even at the sound of that, like, oh, bloody hell, boxers filled like sort of instantly cementing concrete. Ah, shit. Give us a warning next time, mate. But let's play with the idea, shall we? What would it take for the Conservatives to win the next election, and what would it look like thereafter? So, first thing that would need to take place, I think you would see them flood the zone. Have you heard that phrase? Flooding the zone. This is something that was bandied around by Steve Bannon in the original 2016 Trump campaign. This is a tactic that I believe originally came from Russia. Like this idea that you just flood the zone with as much misinformation, misleading narratives, demonstrable lies, that everyone just kind of gets confused and overwhelmed, and then they don't kind of really know what is true or what is reliable anymore. And we like to think in this country that would never happen here. This is a Western liberal democracy. If people started spouting outright lies, then Labour would sue them, or there would be some sort of recompense for that. But I think what we're starting to see now already, this far away from the GE, is that this is a tactic that they're going to start using more and more. In fact, we've already seen it at the Conservative Party conference, only 3 weeks ago? How many Conservative MPs did you see who were just wheeling out lie after misrepresentation after lie again? And I think the fact is, there's very little pushback. There's not really an awful lot you can do about it. Like in this country, we have, I think, a sort of group mentality that we think, oh, you could never say something as outlandish like that about your political adversaries. But actually, you could say a lot of stuff with no clapbacks legally. You could say to Labour, oh, is it true that you get half your money from the Chinese triads? Confirm or deny, And then the accusation or the suggestion is already out there. Is it true that you get half your donor money from the Italian mafioso? Give me a yes or no, And then people start to believe it. And even if Labour, it's hugely unlikely that they would sue the Conservative Party, but even if they did decide to sue CCHQ for that sort of misrepresentation, the result of those court cases would never be realised in time for the general election. So I think you're going to see a lot more lies, misrepresentations, and flooding of the zone. Now, let's say it was successful and the Tories did get in for another term. What would it look like for the UK thereafter? So I think first thing, straight off the bat, I often talk about this idea that it's like last drinks, last orders at the Titanic, right? And I honestly think the UK economy is in such a bad way now. I often talk about how the debt is over 100% of the GDP. So everything that we generate in the gross domestic product is already accounted for by the national debt. So where are you getting money for public services? If anything, you're looking at reducing public services, making people more miserable, cutting back on universal credit, slashing pensions, you name it, they're going to have to get rid of it. So if the Tories get in for another term, that is what you are going to see. Now, if Labour got in, you would stand maybe a smidgeny chance of aligning more closely with the single market and the customs union, and it's possible we could foster growth in some way, shape or form with that. I get increasingly cynical about this now in terms of whether you could actually achieve growth, because if you look at the economies of France and Germany and so on, rejoining the EU wouldn't necessarily lead to the growth that we need to be able to sort this GDP debt situation out. But if Labour got in and you did rejoin, there is a slight chance that maybe something like that might miraculously happen. However, with the Tories, they're so fucking drunk on Brexit, that is just a fantasy. That is not going to happen. And so I think what you will see if the Tories did win another term, honestly, they would just be like, right, everything's fucked. Let's just loot as much money as we possibly can for the next 4 years until we really are kicked out. Let's just, right, have you got a private limited company? Have you? Yeah, oh, come over here. Yeah, I'll sort you out with a contract. You thought Baroness Moan and her £60 million contract with the pharmaceutical company that her husband was on the board for, or whatever the fuck that was. You thought that was offensive, did you? Okay, well, strap in, because if the Tories get in and they know that they're on borrowed time to loot as much money from the public purse as they possibly can, you're going to start seeing $3 billion contracts signed off for a supply of their like husbands or nieces or donor or extended family members, private limited company contract, to supply like 3,000 paper clips. Or something. Like, it's going to be that ridiculous. I think you would also see an explosion of authoritarian governance. Like, people will realise what's going on and they will rise up and they will protest or riot. So you would need to see some sort of expansion of authoritarian powers, you know? Like, if you're even thinking of protesting at the moment, they can give you a protest ASPO and just lock you in your house for a week. I mean, you could still cause trouble from your home, though, right? You could still incite and so on. So I think you would see that expanded to actual jail terms. I think you may also start to see, and this may sound a little bit hysterical, but just bear with me. I don't think you would start to see journalists getting jailed necessarily. I think that would be a little bit, too far. But I think you would start to see left-leaning journalists, people who were really causing the government problems by shining a light on the corruption, on the criminal behaviour. I think you might start to see them getting involved in like legal entanglements, being frustrated, attempting to be silenced. Because it sort of starts with like jailing protesters or frustrating their ability to get out and get their message heard. But that is only half of it, right? That's like protesters are over here. Then you've got the journalists, the people with like the amplifiers and the microphones and the cameras and stuff who are also getting their message out. You've got to sort of take care of them as well. So I think you would start to see left-leaning broadcasters, Channel 4 News, The Guardian, Novara Media, getting into some sort of problem with like Ofcom or tax issues, like something to try to shut them down and stop them causing the government problems. And I have to sort of like pause for a second because I understand how hysterical this sounds. Like people are like, oh my God, Aid has lost his mind. Like he really thinks if the Tories got in for another term, like we would turn into like Belarus. I'm like, hello, like where have you been? Like we're already like, I think it's just us and Belarus that still use first past the post for our elections. We're already using like voter ID when we don't need to. We're already seeing centre and centre-left news organisations being removed from the government press pools. Like protest is illegal now while corruption is, implicitly not. And you know what? I'm a big believer in, if you want to predict someone's future behaviour or the future behaviour of an institution like the Conservative Party, your best indicator will be by looking at their past behaviour, their past conduct. And what have we seen over the last 13 years? We've seen public services gradually deplete into a state of disrepair. We've seen corruption fucking skyrocket. Authoritarianism is just a sort of, a way of life now. It's like, oh, you're being hysterical, Aid. Oh, you're being like, how could you possibly think that their future behaviour could ever be the behaviour that this trajectory is definitely, absolutely on its way to? How could you do that? I mean, at least my sort of prediction of where we're headed if they win the next election, at least mine is sort of grounded in reality. Whereas, do you remember before, was it the 2017 election where it's Corbyn and Theresa May? And they wrote that article in the Mail, was it? Or the Express? About like, this is what Corbyn's first 30 days in power would look like. So at least mine is in reality-ish. Anyway, these are my thoughts. Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think if the Tories get in, do you think it would actually get as bad as that? Do you agree with me that it could do? Or do you think, like maybe if Labour get in, it could be just as bad because the economic situation is that bad? That's pretty much all that they can do. Maybe you think if Labour come in, then they're going to fix everything and we will be on a completely different trajectory. The timeline will shift and it will be rainbows, blowjobs and teddy bears for everyone. Maybe you're completely disillusioned with all of the political parties and all of the parliamentary apparatus and so on. And really what you're looking for is a cult to get involved in. And if that is the case, maybe consider jumping over onto my Patreon, where I post all of my podcasts 2 days before everyone else. We have a Discord chat. We've got London meetups. I give tickets to the live shows with me, Supertansky, Danny Price, Marina Perkis. I put all of my tickets out to those guys first. If that sounds like your bag, and if you are looking to join a new cult, maybe after the fall of Trump, the failure of Brexit, maybe jump on patreon.com/Aid Thompson. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Peace.